Hey, what's going on everybody? My name is Monatui, coach of the Tampa Bay Luxrays, and today I'm bringing you guys our GBA Season 7 Week 7 team builder versus none other than Dan, aka Adrive, coach of the St. Louis Rampardos. If you've not done so already, please check out his YouTube link in the description below, as always. This week is the first week where we are looking to come back from a loss during the season, which, you know, that's okay. Chimpact played very, very well. However, just because we lost once does not mean that I would like to lose again, so we are going to definitely try our best to kind of get back onto a winning streak and make sure that we can guarantee ourselves a playoff spot. Once we get our playoff spot, maybe we can relax a little bit, but for right now, it's still up in the air, and we are still looking to win a few more games, and like I said, just clinch that playoff spot. So, without further ado, let's get into the roster that Dan decided to draft this season. On Dan's roster, he has Victini, Clefable, Terrakion, Toxapex, Gliscor, Delmives, Golisopod, Scizor, Xcloud, Electros, and Haxorus. Terrakion is his Z-move user, so I have to be a little bit careful of that, because as we all know, Z-moves can cause problems for teams, but yeah, that's his roster. Very, very scary roster. He's got a lot of bulky offense. The three that he has in the very top, Victini, Clefable, Terrakion, is a very, very solid core. He's got very good bulk as well to pair with that, like Toxapex and Gliscor. Like I said, he has some bulky offense like Electros and Scizor, Golisopod, Delmives, things that can take hits and fire back very powerfully. But I believe I've built a team of 6 that will be able to take on whatever team of 6 he decides to bring, and without further ado, let's just get into that team. So, we're going to start it off with our Greninja here. It's going to be relatively standard, actually very similar to the Greninja we brought last week against Chimp. Hydro Pump, Dark Pulse, Water Shuriken, and Spikes. As you can see here, we have enough speed to outspeed everything on his team that we are able to outspeed, which I believe it is everything on his team. This should be able to allow me this should allow me to outspeed his fastest Pokemon, which is his Terrakion, which is very, very nice. Obviously, if it's Choice Scarf or it gets up a Rock Polish, I won't be able to outspeed it, but that is a big reason why we have Water Shuriken on there, just so that we can hit that. Hydro Pump, Dark Pulse, Water Shuriken hits pretty much his entire team neutrally or super effectively. There were a couple other moves that I were considering on this thing. I originally had Gunk Shot on this Greninja, because I'd be able to hit the Clefable a little bit harder if he were more of a specially defensive Clefable. However, based on my team structure, like the fact that I have things like Zygarde and I have things like Buzzwole, I'm thinking he has to be more of a physically defensive Clefable, just because, possibly unaware as well, to stop with, or to deal with setup Zygarde, even though I'm not, and we'll get into that in a little bit. I feel like he needs to be a little bit more physically defensive in order to deal with things like my Zygarde and Buzzwole, because if he's more specially defensive, then he's going to have a very hard time dealing with those two Pokemon in particular, as well as some of the other things on my team. So I'm thinking he's going to be more physically defensive, and if he's more physically defensive, then Hydro Pump does more than Gunk Shot anyway. So we're going to be running that. Unless he's like calm with a lot of Spadeft, Hydro Pump will be a 2-KO on him no matter what, so he's not going to be able to switch into me necessarily, which is very, very nice. I was also very much considering Extra Sensory for the Toxapex, but without Protein, it's not a 2-KO anyway. Even if he doesn't have Spadef investment, or if he doesn't have a lot of Spadef investment, so that's not going to help me very much. And then I was considering HP Fire for the Scizor, but Hydro Pump hurts that, and then I was considering Ice Beam for the Haxorus, but Dark Pulse does enough to the Haxorus anyway, and I do have some other ways to deal with the Haxorus, in which we will get into in a little bit. Big reason we have Spikes. It's a similar reasoning that we had, it's a similar reasoning to why we had Spikes last game versus Chimp. It was because the switch-in that he had to Greninja, Alomomola, would be able to take whatever I wanted to do, and then just force me out and recover itself up. However, with Spikes, I will be able to set up Spikes on that Pokemon and possibly gain myself a little bit of Hazard Stack pressure versus his team. Obviously, that did not end up working out last game because, unfortunately, Chimp had a spinner on his team and he was able to get rid of my hazards, and his Alomomola was carrying a Wake Up Slap, so that plan kind of backfired. However, I feel like the target Pokemon that I want to set up Spikes versus, being the Toxapex, will be a lot easier in order to set up these Spikes, because the best thing that he can do to me is Toxic me or hit me with a Sludge Bomb. If he sets up Toxic Spikes versus me, then I have my Salazzle, as you can see on screen, in order to absorb them. So I'm hoping that the plan will go a little bit better this time, not only because Toxapex can do less than Alomomola to me, but also because his hazard removal is a lot worse than Chimpac's, in my opinion. His only hazard removers are Gliscor, which he has to run Hyper Cutter on. He can't run Toxic Heal and Defog at the same time. And regular Scizor, which is not the best defogger in the world. It can function if he really wants it to, but I feel like something like an SD Scizor with like Aerial Ace, Knockoff, Superpower, Bullet Punch, things like that, would be a lot more beneficial for my team. Like, if he's defensive with Defog, he's missing out on some move coverage that's going to be very useful for him, and I will happily take that trade-off. And regular Sizzler is not nearly as good of a defogger as Mega Sizzler anyway, so I don't know if he would do that. But regardless, his team's relatively weak to spikes, and hopefully I'll be able to set them up and start threatening his team. If he doesn't bring Toxapex, I can choose to either set up spikes versus something else, or I can just choose to go for an attack on something, because if he does not bring his Toxapex, he really doesn't have a good switch into this. Like, his best switch in at that point would probably be something like maybe his Clefable if he is a specially defensive Clefable, which I'm not expecting, or if he decides to bring, like, a specially defensive Golisopod or something like that that can take on Dark Pulses, but I don't really expect that to happen. So Greninja is a very big offensive threat to his team, and the one thing that I expect him to bring in order to switch into it, I can set up spikes versus and start hazard stacking against his team. So that is our Greninja. Relatively standard, relatively similar to the Greninja set we brought last week against Shimp, except with Water Shuriken over, I believe, Gunk Shot. The next Pokemon we're going to go over here is going to be our Zygarde, and we are bringing a Choice Banded Zygarde, 1000 Arrows, Outrage, Extreme Speed, and Crunch. 1000 Arrows is very, very spammable across his entire team. It hits his team very, very hard, except for a couple things, and those things are his Golisopod and his Dhelmise. It doesn't do too much to the Gliscor either, but it does do a decent bit of damage, especially because I'm banded, and especially if he's specially defensive instead of physically defensive, I'll be able to do a lot of damage to that thing. And then we do have a little bit of coverage to hit the other Pokemon in his team. Like Dhelmise, I can hit with Banded Crunch and possibly get a 2 KO on that thing, depending on his spread. And then something along the lines of Golisopod, if rocks are up, it's going to be taking 25%. It's not going to necessarily want to switch in on 1000 Arrows. And I do have other things to deal with the Golisopod on my team that can possibly switch in, like my Buzzwole or my Miltank, which we'll get into in a little bit. I heavily debated going for like a Coil Dragon Dance set, because that did put in a lot of work versus his team. But I decided not to, just because in case he's like an unaware Clefable, I'm not going to be able to do anything to that, and it's going to be really annoying for me to deal with. Something like a Banded Terrakion, if I have a Coil up, will still do a lot of damage to me, or if I have a Dragon Dance up, a Scarf Terrakion will do a lot of damage to me. After a Dragon Dance, I don't outspeed a Scarf Haxorus, etc. So I decided to not go with the setup variant this week. However, Banded still puts in a ton of work versus this team. Like you can see, it takes any hit from Victini, including a Glaciate, and I can knock that thing out with 1000 Arrows. I hit Clefable very hard. If he is a more specially defensive Clefable, like a very heavily invested specially defensive Clefable, Banded 1000 Arrows should be able to 2 KO that thing. I'll be able to knock out the Terrakion with 1000 Arrows, and I will be able to take any one hit from it. I hit the Toxapex very, very hard. Like I said, I hit the Gliscor kind of hard if he's physically defensive. I hit him a lot harder if he's Spadef, obviously. I've Crunched for the Dhelmise. Like I said, Golisopod doesn't want to switch in if hazards are up. Sizzler doesn't really want to switch in on 1000 Arrows. X-Cloud can't switch in. Electros is straight up O-Code because 1000 Arrows actually hits it super effectively because it ignores Levitate. And then Haxorus doesn't really want to switch in on me either. So this is a very, very good Pokemon for his team. I'm really looking forward to bringing it. It should be able to put in a lot of work because 1000 Arrows is super spammable, and then I have coverage for the things that 1000 Arrows doesn't really hit all that hard. So that's Zygarde, very nice Pokemon for his team. Like I said, I think Choice Band is a little bit better than Dragon Dance or Coil this week. Hopefully I'm right about that, although I have been wrong in the past. And with that being said, we're now going to move on to the next Pokemon on our team, and that is going to be our Salazzle. I believe this is the second time we're bringing this thing, which is really nice. I'm hoping to utilize this thing a little bit more because it is a really cool Pokemon. But we are bringing a Flamethrower, Sludge Bomb, HP Ice, Toxic, Corrosion Salazzle. Now, I originally actually was going to bring Mono Attacking Sub-Disable, but I decided to go with this set just because if he brings something along the lines of his Gliscor, then like Sub-Disable wouldn't be able to beat it necessarily 1v1 because he'd be getting Toxic Heal. He'd be able to stall out the turn to disable, which is not really what I want to do. So I decided to go with this Expert Belt set. Flamethrower, Sludge Bomb, HP Ice hits pretty much his entire team. As you can see there, Sludge Bomb for the Victini, Sludge Bomb for Clefable. I don't hit the Terrakion necessarily too hard, but Salazzle doesn't really get coverage to do that anyway. Toxapex, I will be able to Toxic. With Corrosion, I'm finally taking a bit advantage of that ability. With Corrosion, I will be able to land a Toxic onto that Toxapex and be able to whittle that thing down, which is very, very nice, because Toxapex is super annoying, and obviously the best way to deal with bulky Pokemon like that is to poison them, and you can't poison it usually because it's a poison type. However, with Salazzle's ability Corrosion, I will be able to do so, and that's something I'm very much looking forward to. And aside from that, I can just click Toxic on whatever wants to come in. Like, the only thing that might be well, there are two things on his team that might not mind being poisoned. One is obviously the Gliscor because of poison heal and whatnot, but I do have Expert Belt boosted HP Iced in order to hit that thing, which will do a ton of damage to that. And possibly like a Magikarp Clefable, but there's no way he would ever want to switch in a Clefable on my Salazzle because obviously of Poison Stab. So Salazzle is a very, very big threat against his team this week. I think it's a very good bring. Like I said, Flamethrower, Sludge Bomb, HP Ice hit his team very, very hard. Flamethrower is pretty much only there for the Delmise as well as the Sizzler. I didn't really need the power of Fire Blast in order to hit those two unless he's something along the lines of like an Assault Vest Delmise, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Expert Belt Flamethrower should still do plenty of damage to that. And yeah, that is going to be our Salazzle. We are now going to move on to the next member of our team, and that is going to be our physically defensive Chople Berry Miltank, Earthquake, Fire Punch, Milk Drink, Stealth Rock. So we're not running Stab on this Miltank. I struggled with this moveset for a little bit because he's got like a lot of different type synergy, and I wanted like Ice Punch, I wanted Body Slam, I wanted Toxic on there, I wanted Thunder Wave on there, but I just couldn't fit them all. But I really wanted to bring Miltank because I definitely want to bring Rocks versus his team. He's relatively weak to it, and like I said, he doesn't have the best hazard removal, so we have Rocks on there, and then we need Milk Drink in order for that recovery. So I was basically left with 2 slots open for attacking moves, and because I see that Terrakion is a very big threat, and I don't want this thing to be set up fodder to Terrakion, I decided to run Earthquake, and then soon after I decided to run the Chople Berry. With the Chople Berry, I'll be able to live any close combat from the Terrakion and fire back, and Earthquake doing a lot of damage to him, especially if he is at -1 defense, which is very nice. I won't be able to OHKO him, but -1 defense Earthquake will definitely put him in range of Greninja's Water Shuriken, so that's very important to keep in mind. We also here, as you can see, have Fire Punch. I don't really want to be set up fodder for the Sizzler either. That can be a very big threat to the team. Not that I expect it to be a huge threat to the team, but if I let it set up a bunch of Swords Dances in my face, then it can definitely be a problem. Like, I don't want Buzzwole taking like a +6 Bullet Punch. If my Jirachi's weakened, it doesn't want to take like a +4, +6 Bullet Punch. Same thing with Greninja, same thing with Zygarde, same thing with Salazzle, so I definitely want to be very careful of that. Even though my team does deal with Sizzler relatively well, if he does find the opportunity to set up on a Miltank, I don't want to let him do that. Also with Earthquake, and obviously with Thick Fat, I'm a very, very good switch into the Victini. He could be a Focus Blast variant of Victini. That would definitely make a lot of sense. He might be a Will-O-Wisp variant or something along those lines. But if he is like a Focus Blast variant of Victini, I do have the Chople Berry in order to take that hit, which is very nice. Also, obviously, he has to hit Focus Blast, which I believe is 78% accurate on a Victory Star boosted Victini, which is still not the best in the world, which is nice. With the Chople Berry, I can take a +1 superpower or low kick from the Haxorus, which is very, very nice. So as you can see, this Pokemon has a lot of utility, which is very, very good. Even though I am possibly set up fodder for the Haxorus, I do have other ways to deal with that, which we'll get into in a little bit. Part of it is priority, which you've already seen. Like we have HP and Water Shuriken, and I can possibly pick off a very whittled Haxorus that we happen to deal with. I also have the next Pokemon we're going to get into, which we will get into now, and that is going to be our Buzzwole. Not physically defensive, but adamant, kind of speedy Buzzwole, 84 defense investment, just threw the rest into defense in order to take on the rest of his team. 4 attacks, Cobra Berry. We have the Cobra Berry there basically because I didn't really need any other specific item. Like, I was thinking about Leftovers just for the passive recovery, but I don't necessarily need it. I was thinking Lumberry in case he decided to be like toxic on his Gliscor, but he might just be like Flying Stab and be like Chimpact and just ruin my dreams. So I don't want to do that. He's got some other options. He's got like Acrobatics Electros, he's got like HP Flying Electros, he's got possibly like Aerial Ace Haxorus, Aerial Ace Sizzler. He's got a lot of potential flying coverage, and because I didn't necessarily need another item on this thing, I decided to just go with Cobra Berry, kind of as like a safety precaution. Like, there are a few things he could do that could throw me off and possibly like kill me if I'm not smart about it. Like, if he gets up to +2 with Terrakion and he has Aerial Ace, he can just go for that and knock me out if I don't have the Cobra Berry. Whereas with the Cobra Berry, I'll be able to take that +2 Aerial Ace, I'll eat the Cobra Berry, it'll still do a lot of damage, but I will be able to live it, and then I will be able to knock out the Terrakion with the superpower. And because Terrakion is probably the biggest threat to my team, I am going to be very happy with that trade. The coverage that you see on there, like I said, it just hits pretty much everything on his team. Like, Superpower, just General Stab, hits the Terrakion very hard. It hits things like the Sizzler and the X-Cloud, the Electros, as well as the Haxorus. We have Earthquake on there. That's largely for the Toxapex. It also hits the Victini super effectively, which is very nice. We have Ice Punch on there. That's primarily for the Gliscor. It also hits the Delmise, which is very, very nice. Also hits the Haxorus. for super effective damage, although Superpower does do more to that. And then we have Poison Jab there specifically for the Clefable. So there's nothing on his team that straight up walls this Pokemon. He can definitely pivot in between different Pokemon, but if I get a prediction correct, I'm definitely going to be able to 2 KO something on his team. Unless, like I said, he's like a fully physically defensive Clefable, in which I don't think with leftovers Poison Jab actually is a guaranteed 2 KO. But then he's going to be forced to recover anyway, and I can capitalize on that by going out into something like my Salazzle or going to my Jirachi. So, yeah, that's going to be our Buzzwole. Like I said, very, very big offensive threat to his team. The Cobra Berry, I'm hoping will be put to good use. I hope I don't regret like not having leftovers or something along those lines. But he's got so many different possible flying coverage options on his team. I'm thinking the Cobra Berry is going to be useful this game, and I hope I'm right on that. Same thing with being banded over setup. I hope I'm right on that, and I hope I'm right on this Buzzwole. So that's that. Now we are going to move on to the final member of our team, and that is going to be our Jirachi. So this is also a set that I changed around so many different times. I was originally physical. I changed it to Scarf, but then I was like, no, Scarf isn't necessarily good against his team. Then I changed it to Mix, like I was mostly physical with HP Fire. And then I opted for like Calm Mind, but then I couldn't really do that successfully. So instead, I opted to go with this. As you can see, we have the Shuka Berry, so we're running the triple Resist Berry core here. I'm hoping that works out very well. Psychic, Flash Cannon, Icy Wind, and Hidden Power Fire. Similarly to the Buzzwole, this moveset here hits pretty much everything on his team very hard. Also with the Buzzwole, I think I forgot to mention, the only thing I don't hit hard with Buzzwole is the Golisopod, but it's not the worst deal in the world. I do have ways to deal with it, and I don't think Lysopod can do too much to me unless it's running Aerial Ace. This moveset of, these 4 moves hit pretty much everything on his team, other than the Victini, but this, like, Victini beats pretty much any set of Jirachi any day of the week, unless I'm running something along the lines of, like, Shadow Ball, which I couldn't really fit on this set here, because I need Icy Wind. I need to be able to hit that Gliscor as well as that Haxorus, and I'll get into that in a little bit. We have Psychic there, just for stab, as well as being able to hit the Terrakion, as well as the Toxapex, which is going to be very, very important. We have Flash Cannon there, very important to hit the Clefable, also the Terrakion it hits, which is very, very nice. Hidden Power Fire is very big for the Sizzler. I need that. I don't want to be, once again, I don't really want to be setup fodder for the Sizzler in case he decides to bring it. And then we're running Icy Wind. Now, Icy Wind is very important, not only for the super effective damage it's going to get on the Haxorus as well as the Gliscor, but if I'm able to Icy Wind a +1 Haxorus, with the Shuka Berry, I can take a +1 Earthquake, which is very, very important. I can then take that Earthquake and then hit him with an Icy Wind, slow him down to back to neutral, and then I will be able to outspeed him on the following turn and be able to knock him out with the next Icy Wind. I can also stay in versus Haxorus and Scout. Like if he is Scarf with Earthquake, I'll be able to Scout for that, take the Earthquake with a Shuka Berry, fire off an Icy Wind, be able to slow him down, outspeed him, threaten him with another attack afterwards, which is going to be very, very useful. I can slow down basically whatever is in front of me, and by basically whatever is in front of me, I mean like literally whatever is in front of me, which can be very, very useful. Like, suppose there's a Terrakion in front of me, and I'm like, well, I can't kill him with Psychic or something along those lines for whatever reason, and I'm like, maybe I can get a little bit of chip damage with Icy Wind, maybe I can slow him down, and then I can knock him out with the next Pokemon. I can do that if I wanted to. Maybe Terrakion's not the best example in the world, but suppose it's like a Scarfed X-Cloud or something, and I hit that thing with an Icy Wind. I'm able to do that, and then everything on my team is going to be able to outspeed it and deal with it, which is going to be very useful. Even the Gliscor, like for example, Gliscor might be able to outspeed my Buzzwole if he's a speedy variant of Gliscor, so I can hit that thing with an Icy Wind. It'll live on a little bit of HP, but it'll be slowed down, and then I can send in my Buzzwole and outspeed it and knock it out with an Ice Punch, which is going to be very useful. Maybe if he has like a random Scarfer, I can hit that with an Icy Wind and then outspeed it with something on my team and revenge kill it. So this set I'm hoping to put in a lot of work versus this team. Similar to the Buzzwole, he really does not have great switch-ins to this thing. Like the only thing that I can see him possibly switching into this is going to be like an AV Electros, which is definitely very possible, but I do have some other ways to deal with Electros. Like I said, Zygarde just straight up OHKOs it, Buzzwole hits it really hard, Miltank sets up rocks versus it, and even if it's a Assault Vest, it doesn't necessarily want to switch in on a Life Orb Greninja, or even like a Sludge Bomb from Salazzle, so that is going to be the team. Like I said, definitely check out Dan in the description if you have not done so already. Let me know what you think of the team in the comment section below, and I hope you guys are looking forward to the match that will be going up on Sunday as always. So, once again, thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you then.